Reform UK's £10 billion immigration crackdown. 5 flights a day out of Britain. Right? Let's cut straight through the Westminster waffle, shall we? While the Tories fumble about with their Rwanda scheme that sent more Home Secretaries than migrants, Nigel Farage has just dropped what might be the most audacious immigration policy this side of the Channel Tunnel. 5 deportation flights. Every single day. That's not a typo. That's Reform UK's latest pitch to the British public. And frankly, it's got everyone from Whitehall to the European Court of Human Rights reaching for their strongest coffee. But here's what's absolutely fascinating about this whole affair. We're talking about a £10 billion operation that would fundamentally reshape how Britain handles its borders. Now, before you start thinking this is just another politician's pipe dream, consider this. Farage isn't some backbench nobody anymore. He's the MP for Clecton. He's got reform breathing down the Conservative Party's neck in the polls, and has essentially declared war on what he calls Britain's massive crisis of illegal immigration. The man's not messing about. So what exactly are we dealing with here? The centerpiece is something called the Illegal Migration Mass Deportation Bill, and yes, they've actually called it that. No beating around the Westminster bush. Under this proposed emergency legislation, anyone, and I mean anyone, arriving in Britain via small boats will be banned from claiming asylum. Full stop. No IFS, no buts, no lawyers argue about exceptional circumstances. You arrive illegally, you're detained, and you're gone. Now, where would these people be held while awaiting their one-way ticket out of Britain? Well, this is where it gets rather interesting. Reform UK wants to convert decommissioned military bases and IAF facilities into what they are politely calling detention centres. Think less holiday camp, more Her Majesty's prison, but for migrants. The message, as Farage puts it with characteristic bluntness, is crystal clear. If you come, you won't stay. You won't find sanctuary in Britain by paying a people trafficker to cross the channel. But wait, it gets better or worse, depending on your perspective. Reform UK has its sights set on negotiating deportation agreements with some rather questionable destinations. We're talking about Afghanistan and Eritrea here, countries that even the Foreign Office acknowledges have significant human rights concerns. When pressed about this rather uncomfortable detail, Farage's response was typically pragmatic. If direct deportations aren't possible, they'd use third countries like Rwanda and Albania, or, and this is where it gets truly creative, British overseas territories such as Ascension Island as temporary holding facilities. Ascension Island, for those not familiar with Britain's far-flung territories, is a volcanic rock in the middle of the South Atlantic, roughly 4,000 miles from London. It's currently home to about 800 people, mostly military personnel and contractors. The idea of transforming it into a migrant processing center is either brilliantly audacious or completely barking mad, depending on your politics. Here's where Reform UK shows it's not entirely heartless, though they're offering what they call a voluntary returns program. Essentially, if you fancy departing Britain of your own accord within 6 months, they'll give you £2,500 and a government-funded flight home. It's like a twisted version of Love Island, except instead of winning money for coupling up, you get paid to leave. The financial arithmetic behind this grand scheme is genuinely eye-watering. Reform UK estimates the entire operation would cost £10 billion over 5 years. That's roughly the same as the annual budget for the Department for International Development, just to put it in perspective. But here's their clever bit of political accounting. They claim this massive expenditure would eventually save money by eliminating the £7 billion currently spent annually on asylum hotels and support services. It's the political equivalent of spending money to save money, and whether you buy into that logic probably depends on your view of Nigel Farage's mathematical abilities. The enforcement mechanisms Reform UK proposes are equally robust. Anyone attempting to return to the UK after deportation would face criminal charges. Destroy your identity documents. Criminal charges. Try to game the system in any way. More criminal charges. It's a zero-tolerance approach that makes Priti Patel look positively liberal. But perhaps the most constitutionally radical element of this entire proposal is Reform UK's pledge to withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights and replace it with what they are calling a British Bill of Rights. Now, this isn't just about immigration. This would fundamentally alter Britain's relationship with European legal frameworks that have been in place since the aftermath of World War II. Farage argues this new bill would prioritize citizens over foreigners and use terms like liberty and freedom, though one suspect the liberty and freedom would be somewhat selective. The practical challenges of implementing such a scheme are, frankly, staggering. The infrastructure alone would require a massive expansion of detention capacity, with thousands of migrants housed in what Reform UK delicately describes as repurposed military bases and temporary facilities under close supervision. We're talking about creating what would essentially be the largest detention system in Western Europe, all while maintaining what Farage insists would be humane conditions. The diplomatic implications are equally complex. Negotiating these deportation agreements would require what Reform UK euphemistically calls using diplomatic clout and financial incentives. In plain English, that means bribing other countries to take people Britain doesn't want, whether nations like Afghanistan, currently under Taliban rule, or Eritrea, frequently described as Africa's North Korea, will be reliable partners in such arrangements remains, shall we say, questionable. Critics have been quick to point out the legal and practical obstacles. Courts have consistently blocked deportations to countries with poor human rights records, and the infrastructure requirements for places like Ascension Island would be astronomical. You'd essentially need to build an entire city on a remote island, complete with accommodation, processing facilities, medical services, and security apparatus. The logistics alone would make D-Day look like a weekend camping trip. The political reaction has been predictably explosive. Protests have already erupted outside existing asylum centers, with Farage calling for a peaceful protest while simultaneously warning that people are frustrated and rightly concerned. It's classic Farage, stirring the pot while calling for calm, lighting the fuse while deploring the explosion. What makes this particularly significant is Reform UK's positioning ahead of the next general election. Immigration has consistently polled as one of the top concerns for British voters, and while the Conservatives have spent years promising to take back control of the borders, their actual record has been rather less impressive. The Rwanda scheme, after years of legal battles and hundreds of millions in costs, managed to deport precisely nobody before Labour scrapped it entirely. Into this vacuum steps Farage with a plan so comprehensive, so radical, that it makes previous proposals look positively timid. The electoral mathematics are intriguing. Reform UK doesn't need to win a majority to influence policy. They just need to win enough seats to hold the balance of power, or scare the Conservatives into adopting their policies. It's the same playbook that worked with Brexit, and there's no reason to think it won't work again with immigration. Whether you view this as a necessary response to a genuine crisis or an authoritarian overreach probably depends on your political perspective. What's undeniable is that Farage has once again managed to set the terms of political debate, forcing other parties to respond to his agenda rather than setting their own. The man has a talent for political disruption that would be admirable if it weren't so frequently terrifying. So there you have it. Reform UK's blueprint for transforming Britain's approach to illegal immigration through what amounts to the largest deportation program in British history. 5 flights a day, £10 billion over 5 years, and a fundamental restructuring of how Britain relates to both European law and international humanitarian norms. It's audacious, controversial, and probably unworkable, which, knowing British politics, probably means it'll be the defining issue of the next election campaign. What do you think? Is this a tough action Britain needs on illegal immigration, or has Farage finally gone too far? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to UK Connors for more no-nonsense analysis of the political stories that actually matter. Because in a world of political spin and Westminster waffle, sometimes you need someone to tell you what's really going on, even when it's not pretty.